Hello, BookTube. Well, it's the beginning of May, and that on BookTube means a slew of TBR videos where people go through the list of what they're going to be reading in the month of May. And I want to participate, of course, but I can't really do that because I'm going to be reading a mountain of books in May. I plan on breaking uh, a personal record for the month. I can't possibly show you them all. And besides, we're going to be going through them together, most likely, quite a few of them. So instead, what I do on this channel is not a TBR, but a TBR BY, a to be read by you, in which I show you 10 uh, forthcoming titles from May, 10 books that are out already or that are coming out soon in the month that I wholeheartedly recommend. And hope that the video serves as a kind of equivalent of me being with you in a bookstore where you were going around the new release tables and you're saying, "Oh, is this good?" I've got them here on the trusty iPad, and I want to show them to you, starting with a work of history that I think we've seen on this channel before. This is Holger Hook. This is Scars of Independence. Oh, golly. Oh, my. Here, what about this side? No? No. Well, I'll list all the books down below anyway. You can kind of, sort of make it out, but not really. Let's see. Actually, let's ask the phone if it will do the right thing. There we go. That's a little better. The subtitle is America's Violent Birth, and the book is really, really good. It's about the American Revolution, of course, but it stresses the internecine quality of it. It reminds American readers that most Americans didn't want to break with Britain, and most of them were loyalists. They were in favor of the British cause, not revolution. That was a fraction. That was a minority that did that. So as a result, it's tremendously refreshing to read, even on one of the most familiar historical subjects of all in the American book market. And those will be the refrain throughout the video. If you are interested in the subject or you know somebody who is, you can't go wrong with the book. And the next one, you also can't go wrong, but it's a completely different way. This is Skitter by Ezekiel Boone. This is his sequel to Swarm, in which it's basically monster spiders, and it's done just about as well as monster spider books could possibly be. It's multicast, it's multiple scenes of action, it's the edge of your seat kind of writing, and the spiders live up to their promise. It's a intensely creepy, smart, wonderful book. So, and a series too. But the thing I want to stress about Skitter is that you don't have to read the first one. You can jump right into this one. The author's really good at bringing you up to speed, and also a plot in which giant carnivorous spiders attack mankind isn't exactly Schopenhauer, so you don't really need that much in the way of hand-holding. But I wholeheartedly recommend it for wonderful brainless reading. Then we have last time we did this, I had a celebrity memoir, Alec Baldwin's celebrity memoir, that I told you genuinely surprised me. I wasn't expecting it to be good, and I actually found it to be good. And the same thing's happened again for May, and so there's another book like that that's on this May TBR BY. A total surprise. In fact, a bigger surprise than Alec Baldwin. It's this Odd Birds by Ian Harding, who is, I guess, one of the himbo stars of Pretty Little Liars, a show that I've never seen, but he's got Teen Choice Awards and all that sort of thing. And you would think, if you've read as many self-serving, navel-gazing YouTube celebrity books that as I have, that it would be insufferable. What does a pretty 18-year-old have to say about anything at all, even being a pretty 18-year-old? But it isn't. It turns out it's really, really good. It's wonderful. It's not just a book about his experiences being on a hit TV show. It's also his book about his love of birding. And I didn't see that coming at all. And it's actually, he does a really good job of it. Such a good job, that by the time the book was over, by the time I finished reading it, I was actually kind of hoping that he would just give up the acting thing. And I'm curious to know what other books he'll write, which is, to say the least, not a reaction I usually have when it comes to actors. So I can hardly recommend it. And then the next one is an utter delight, and I've praised it on this channel before. I want to praise it one more time, and that is My Life with Bob by Pamela Paul. Bob is Book of Books. It's a book of all the reading that she's done, all the books that she's encountered in her life that she keeps. She keeps a log of all of her books, and it is the most bookish. It perfectly captures this weird, nonsensical obsession that all of us have, and not many books about books do that. It's a thorough delight. So and also it's a perfect gift for anyone you know who loves books. And in this one instance, you won't need to know anything about their current bookshelves, because this is a book about books, not a book on their pet subject. So it can't go wrong. Well, the next one, I believe I've shown it on this channel before, and it lived up to all of my expectations. It's Shark Dog by Ged Adamson. And it is the story of a little girl whose father is a famous world explorer. And she's on a deep ocean voyage with him. And everything's going fine. And then it's lights out for the night. Only something hops on board and she feels something slurp her face. And the something turns out to be a shark dog. A dog with a fin on his back who has characteristics of both. So there's a wonderful panel where we see a cat making a straight line through the grass. We see its tail. And then coming in diagonally, there's a straight line. We see the fin. We're told that sometimes the shark dog does dog things on land, and sometimes dog things in the water. And we see a picture of her father in scuba gear, and the shark dog is bringing him his slippers underwater. It's funny and it's touching, and the ending will appeal to anyone who's ever adopted an animal. It's an absolute home run. Technically, it's a kid's book. So I guess if you want to buy it, you probably have to give it to a kid. I'm keeping my copy. And I don't see any reason why you can't simply lie at your bookstore and say, oh yeah, this is for little Bianca. I won't tell. The next book is a novel. It's J. Courtney Sullivan, and it's Saints for All Occasions. And you might know her name because she wrote Maine. She wrote a novel called Maine that was tremendously effective and starred a very old matriarch of a family who steals the show. It was really kind of amazing for me to read that book and realize how young the author was. And Saints for All Occasions does the same thing all over again. It's the story of two sisters who come to America from Ireland and have very different lives. And one of the two sisters goes into a convent. The other sister becomes the matriarch of a large family. And the family, they're all grown children now, and they're wonderfully drawn, all of them. But once again, she, the sister who becomes the matriarch of a family, it's a strong suit for this author. She's once again the dominant, most memorable character in the book. But the book is also wonderful. It's a really good portrait of family life, especially the dynamic between the two sisters, who are estranged and then have to deal with each other again after a long time in the course of the book. So, an involving contemporary novel. It isn't artsy fartsy, that has quotation marks around the quotes, that doesn't overdo it on dashes, doesn't do any metafiction, just a wonderful story. That's what this author does really well. Those of you who read Maine will know what I'm talking about. You get a foursquare good novel, something really to enjoy. And the next one also echoes the last TBR BY. And the last TBR BY, one of the items I did was an Everyman library edition of a novel by Anthony Trollope that you may remember, The Duke's Children, my favorite Anthony Trollope novel, where they present in this volume not just a reprint. I mean, it's a very attractive reprint, but they don't just do that. Instead, what you get is the unedited version of The Duke's Children, the version that Trollope originally wrote before his publisher told him to cut 40,000 words from the manuscript. And that had never existed before, except in one very expensive collector item. So the volume was not just an attractive reprint of a Trollope novel, it was also something of a publishing event in very geeky, very rarefied circumstances. And this month, for May, Everyman's Library has done it again with this. It's a new volume of the selected letters of Horace Walpole, who was an 18th century British intellectual and historian, the master of Strawberry Hill. and a fantastic raconteur and a luminously great letter writer. And this is a selection of his letters, and it's a new selection, and it's thoroughly annotated, and it's got a great introduction. It's Horace Walpole is almost entirely out of print, aside from this volume. This is an amazing thing for Everyman's Library to do. And with Trollope, I could sort of understand it. Trollopians are very loyal. You could sort of kind of guarantee a minimum floor of sales for a new Trollope edition. But Horace Walpole has no followers whatsoever. His name is almost entirely forgotten now, except in specialized scholarly circles who aren't going to want a pretty new popular edition. They will already know the material. You wouldn't get it for them, and they wouldn't get it for themselves. So I honestly don't know who this book is meant for, but I applaud its appearance. It's a scholarly benchmark. Future books about Horace Walpole will have to mention this book, and it's a delight to read as well. That's the pitch that I want to make here. It's the longest sell on this list, but he's a delight to make the acquaintance of. So if you feel like doing that, this would be one where I might say, request it from your library if they don't already have it on request. But what a delight! I had to include it. Then the next one is by Laura Kalman, and it's a history, and it was very good, thrillingly challenging, really thought-provoking. It's The Long Reach of the Sixties, and it's about the Warren Court. If any of you are incredibly old, you will remember the Warren Court, which did so much that the Johnson administration and the Nixon administration worked hard to characterize the monumental achievements, legislative achievements of the Warren Court as activist judges gone rogue, as a thing to be avoided. And it's amazing. Kalman points out, makes a case in her book for how the Nixon and Johnson administrations created a characterization of the Warren Court that still applies today on both sides of the aisle, as this kind of bogeyman, this thing that we must avoid at all costs, even though all Americans benefited from the decisions of the Warren Court immensely and still do. So the way that she attacks her subject and just digs into what went on and how it happened and what are the long-term ramifications, just thrilling. The kind of historical writing you really want. I don't know who to recommend it to unless if you have on your list or in your acquaintance, if you have a fan of 20th century history, especially post-war 20th century history, this is must reading, absolutely must reading. And then we'll do a work of natural history, bit tough to read in places, but invigorating. It's by Brenda Peterson, and it's Wolf Nation. And it's about the long, fraught history of wolves in America. So, again, you got to steel yourself, because the stories of the war on wolves in American history are revolting. They're gut churning. No matter who you are, no matter, and even if or if you know or are a rancher out west, who considers wolves to be competition, dangerous predators. Even so, the stories of what was done to these animals and the scale of it and the barbarity of it are just revolting. But the wolves are making a comeback, and they are now the poster childs of the ecological movement. So there are threads of hope running through the second half of the book. And as a portrait of one charismatic megafauna living in this country for the last 200 years, it's just comprehensive. It's amazing. It beats the last book like this that I read, which was 25 years ago, and the game has changed in 25 years, and looks like it's going to be changing again. So if you're at all interested in my people, then it's worth your time. I don't really know. I'm not really clear on the publisher's game plan for getting this in bulk to stores. I don't know if you're going to see this stacked on a new release table, but it's worth finding if you're interested in the subject. And then we'll wrap up this May TBR BY with a Regency romance. I bet you were wondering why there hadn't been one so far, but I couldn't finish without doing it. And in this case, it's Sally MacKenzie, and the book is When to Engage an Earl, and this is the third Spinster House book in her series of young women who've just decided that they don't want any of the headache or the falterall of the marriage market. So they set up Spinster House, but two of them are gone already. In the previous two books, two of them are happily married. And the last one, our heroine is enjoying her solitude in Spinster House. She has room, finally. She has elbow room at breakfast. She has solitude to read and to pet her cat. There's a cat in the book, but that's okay. No book is perfect. And of course, you know already the plot. The plot is utterly charming, which is that, of course, love comes to find her. No one's going to be left at Spinster House. That's the whole point of Spinster House. And, it's like all Regency novels, it's totally predictable, especially a wind-up volume in a long series that has repeated the same pattern over and over again. You know exactly what's going to happen, almost down to the dialogue. But if the writer does a good job, and Sally MacKenzie does, you won't care. It's the perfect way to spend a spring hour in the afternoon. So I wholeheartedly recommend it. And I wholeheartedly recommend all of these. And I'm gonna wrap up now, and I will remember to put all the links down below, or not the links, but the information, so that you can go and find these things. If any of them seem of interest to you, they have that ever elusive Steve seal of approval. And I'll see you soon, book 2. Thank you.